Hey, tech enthusiasts, this is Maggie Davis, your host of TechBus. We're a monthly podcast and exploration of business and technology. We're broadcasting from the TechBus studio in Omaha, Nebraska. And today we have a very special guest, kind of a unique guest for us. Not so much a IT leader, but definitely a leader. We have Heath Mello with us today, who is running for the mayor of Omaha. So just a little bit about Heath before we jump in. He represented District 5 in the Nebraska legislature, where he served as the chairman of the Appropriations Committee until he reached his term limits in 2016. And again, running to be the 52nd mayor of Omaha. So Heath, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Maggie, first off, thanks again for the opportunity to be on TechBus today. It's looking forward to talking a little technology, a little business, a little government, and how they all kind of interact with each other. You know, as you said, I just finished my 8th and final year in the Nebraska unicameral, representing the good people of South Omaha. And I can tell you it was a terrific experience working with Democrats, Republicans, Independents, really trying to bring people together to really solve some big problems facing not just our city, but our state. And to some extent, that experience, I would say, in public service really led me to really consider maybe other ways I could continue to contribute back to the greater good. And so aside from my significant involvement in neighborhood organizations and community betterment organizations and small business groups in South Omaha, you know, I spent a considerable number of months engaging with people across the city about whether or not they thought Omaha was going in the right direction, whether or not they felt we could be a better city, and to really kind of hear more about what their hopes and dreams were for this city moving forward. And through that process, it became very clear to me that people in Omaha right now are looking for someone with a big vision for our city. They're looking for someone who is really trying to get ahead of the curve on major issues facing Omaha, and not simply someone who's just reacting to the world around them. And our campaign over the last 6 months has really tried to take that approach of engaging people across Omaha, from Millard to Elkhorn to North Omaha to Dundee to everywhere in between, and really engage people about some of the issues that we'll talk about today, about the future of how you govern in the 21st century with so much technology, so much data, and so many, I would say, innovative opportunities that governments can be taking if they're willing to bring in the right kind of leadership and they're willing to take the right kind of risks to really try to push themselves to be better performers for the taxpayers. So really looking forward to spending some time with you today and talking about a number of things.
Great. Thanks so much for being with us. So you touched on something that I really wanted to dive into with you today, which is how technology affects government and really how government can use technology. So let's spend a little bit of time where you can speak specifically to how or what opportunities are out there for government to utilize technology.
Well, you know, I would say, Maggie, just an initial perspective, you know, being at the state government level, I can tell you it was an ongoing issue that I had heard about every single year I was helping craft the state's budget, is that different state agencies across Nebraska, more and more, I think, were coming to the realization that some of the technology and some of the equipment that the state was using was simply becoming outdated and antiquated. And the one thing that I feel really proud about, there was a couple initiatives that we really worked on in my time in the legislature. One being really one of the most major technological mainframe, I would say, upgrades that the state has seen with the state's Medicaid system. It's almost $125 million technology upgrade to this system over a number of years, mostly paid through with federal dollars, but still really pushing our state's Department of Health and Human Services to really lay down some markers in regards to upgrading this needed technology and this needed, I would say, needed system to be able to provide better information, track records more appropriately and more accurately, and really be able to engage healthcare providers around the state in a much more real-time basis. It's something that's still going on now, even though I've left the legislature, and they still have a number of years still ahead of them in regards to implementing this project. But that being just one anecdote, really, is I've been talking with people across Omaha on the campaign trail. People are really thirsty for a new mayor who understands and utilizes technology every single day in a way that we know it can change the way we interact with each other, the way we do business, the way we expect transactions to occur, but more importantly, how we actually engage with our government itself. And that's why, everything from really making Omaha a next door city, if people have utilized the technology platform Nextdoor, both on your smartphone or your computer.
I actually have it myself.
To some extent, Omaha shockingly is not a next door city where we should be as a city right now, having the mayor's office, our public works department, our police and fire department really embrace that off the shelf technology right now that can truly engage not just me as the mayor, but the mayor's staff, the frontline officers, frontline public works and street maintenance workers, all working together with neighborhoods and neighbors across the city in a way that right now we're not seeing. And that's why I pledged to make Omaha a next door city when I become mayor, because I'm convinced there's platforms like that that can truly break down that engagement wall that currently exists. That we have a tendency not to really want to embrace the technology that we don't quite know what comes from it. We really, unfortunately, in City Hall have taken a very cautious, conservative approach of utilizing technology to maybe change the way we do business or change the way we interact with people, because the outcomes are sometimes unknown. And I just fundamentally think maybe it's a entrepreneurial spirit that I believe in, that it's okay to take some risks when utilizing technology or new processes or new approaches, as long as, one, if you do fail, you fail quickly. And that's the one thing I think anyone who's worked with startup companies or entrepreneurs or small businesses, that at times you do fail, but as long as you fail quickly and learn from that, particularly when you use technology, you can gain something from that moving forward. And I think that's the one opportunity I really think we've got in the city of Omaha right now, is bringing in a mayor who's got vision and really believes that technology can change the face of the city, can change the way that the city completely operates across the spectrum, but more importantly, changes the way the city engages the taxpayers, because that, at the end of the day, is truly what makes, I would say, Omaha the potential to be the Omaha and the city of the future.
I want to talk a little bit about the economy in Omaha and specifically what your views are on companies that maybe offshore resources. Can you speak to maybe your views and stance on that?
The one thing that I've heard from more and more people, and the irony of this is that there is a woman who is trying to start a call center in South Omaha that is a Spanish language, predominantly Spanish language call center in regards to working with companies in regards to trying to not so much offshore their, obviously, call centers, but try to reshore their call centers into South Omaha, of all places, in regards to Spanish-speaking populations and Spanish-speaking customers. I just say that in the sense that that's someone's dream in regards to realizing that they feel there's a potential in Omaha, Nebraska, to create an opportunity to reshore jobs and reshore an industry that traditionally we know has been offshored for years. A number of call centers, particularly when it involves technology, seeing technology call centers be offshored for feel and see there are business opportunities for them where they feel that there's workforce or talent opportunities for them. And I think that's something that for us in Nebraska right now, knowing that we actually, shockingly, Omaha, the unique challenge we face actually as a city and to some extent as a state is that we've actually got more jobs than people. And the challenge we face particularly is that we don't have the jobs that are currently available. We don't have the workforce to be able to fill those jobs, which is a bigger challenge. So when you talk about offshoring or reshoring any kind of technology services, to some extent it's all connected back to your workforce capabilities and the capacity you have in your workforce. And in talking with technologists and talking with companies, both Fortune 500 companies and tech startups, they've acknowledged that we have a significant challenge right now in the city of Omaha of needing to fill more technology-focused jobs. And the ability they have relayed to me is, and I've enough reading and research that I've been doing over the years, shows that it really is those advanced industries in information technology, truly, amongst other STEM-related education industries, as well as biomedical research, advanced manufacturing. These advanced industries are the jobs of the future. Mm-hmm. And we as a city right now, if this is the opportunity we see, is that companies would love to not offshore their services if we could find ways and the ability to truly train the workforce here in the Omaha or just the metro region, not just Omaha, but the greater metro region at Council Bluffs, Sarpy County, Omaha, Douglas County, even Fremont, Dodge County, up in Blair and Washington County, just the greater metro region to fill some of these jobs. Companies have told me, look, we would we'd love to be able to find more of a supply chain of workforce and talent to be able to provide these services. The challenge we face right now is, at least in Omaha, we just don't have it. So we're looking everywhere else around the country. We're looking everywhere else around the world. And I think that, if anything, should provide anyone in public office, anyone who is a civic leader who cares about the future of our metro economy, that we have a golden opportunity, particularly with Omaha's information technology, I would say, ecosystem growing, it feels like, day by day, that we have an opportunity truly to really make ourselves a unique hub in this country in regards to really focusing our educational efforts with Creighton University, with UNL just down the road, UNMC, Metropolitan Community College, Bellevue University, College of St. Mary. We have so many amazing higher educational institutions, as well as a number of, I would say, educational organizations, just like AIM or Interface or the Code School, a number of organizations and entities that are truly trying to jump in and fill what we know is a significant gap when it comes to our IT workforce. And I think when you think about the future of offshoring and you think about the future of reshoring, I think that is a bigger question Omaha, the business community, and I think our civic community and public community need to be asking ourselves is, what do we have to do to position ourselves to be ahead of this change, to be more of a draw and a magnet for talent to be coming to Omaha, to be able to try to insource some of these services, some of these companies, some of these specific skills that we know right now are needed in the IT world. And that's a conversation I think as mayor I can easily have. And I think to some extent it's a conversation I know a number of people I've been working with on the campaign trail want to have, and they want to see their public leadership understand this issue. They want to see their public leadership try to address this issue and truly be able to tell the story of Omaha, that we can serve as a hub to bring in more talent, to bring in more IT services. It's simply a matter of whether or not we've got the public leadership who not only understands the issue, but actually feels that they can draw enough people together to actually try to solve it and really improve the local economy and ecosystem to bring in more investment and more jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue. I think the unemployment rate for technology professionals right now, it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
So if you're any good in technology,
you're gone. You got a job, and you got a job, and the reality is,
there's no struggle to find
there's
one.
there's no struggle to find one, but you can find a job, but the other cities and other cities are competing against us every day to try to hire people away. And to some extent, whether it's not just salary, it's also that quality of life. It's that, as I call it, it's the Omaha of the future. It's building an Omaha that's a more livable, more walkable Omaha, providing that quality of life, that entertainment, that social experience that people want, like they see in other major metro areas like Denver.
Do you think that's the key to really drive more talent to this market?
Absolutely.
To fulfill some of those hiring needs that many of our employers are experiencing today?
Absolutely. Obviously, ensuring you've got high quality, high wage jobs is always going to be a focus. But particularly when it relates, I would say, to the IT industry and the opportunities, knowing that IT workers right now are being recruited from across the world, obviously to move and to come to different cities in light of what companies are looking for and what companies need to grow and expand. Omaha, we have a lot of work to do because to some extent, while Omaha has a really positive track record of keeping our cost of living low, we know we struggle with a number of issues. Being a welcoming and inclusive community is a significant issue, particularly as it comes to, as I say, making sure we are open arms with our immigrant and refugee community, knowing that we want to bring as many people to Omaha as possible and make sure we integrate them into the social fabric of our city. And just knowing and seeing a number of IT workers come from globally around the world who look to come to major cities, whether it's Omaha, Chicago, the Twin Cities, Denver. That's something that just talking with people that they have acknowledged to me, we have a long way to go in regards to just trying to make people feel welcomed and inclusive, feeling they've got a seat at the table in regards to, as I said, the decisions that happen in the city, because people don't just want to work 18-hour days and just go home and never engage with the public or what happens. No one works that kind of day in, day out schedule 7 days a week. And to some extent, when you're an IT professional and you can literally do your work from anywhere, sometimes in the world.
Right.
What do we have to do in Omaha, Nebraska to help attract you to come live here, move here, either work from home and work for a major corporation somewhere else in the world out of Omaha, Nebraska, and or work for some of our great technology companies here who are looking to attract the talent of the future? And as I've said, look, that incorporates a number of things, from everything from transportation, of ensuring that you can get around Omaha without a car, making sure that we've got housing stocks and housing diversity so that no matter what your lifestyle is, that there is a neighborhood, that there is housing options for you to go and live and pick and choose where you want to live. And really what we've got to do to make Omaha a greener, cleaner city. Things that we know people are looking for, that they want to be able to spend time outside of the office, outside of their home office, and feel that they're able to walk around and really enjoy their city and make sure that it feels clean. It feels like there is just a level of sustainability around them that really attracts them and wants them to really feel that they can take advantage of their parks and their riverfront and be able to go biking or walking or running or jogging, whatever it is. And that's something we know in Omaha we've got more work to do. And that's why, to some extent, as I've been talking about in the campaign trail, that's why I think we've got to really focus on building the Omaha of the future to attract these kind of workers, attract these kind of companies and this kind of investment, because that's what they're looking for in regards to where they choose to move or where they choose to expand.
It really seems like energy and energy efficiency is part of your platform.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what sparked that. Where did that passion come from?
That's a great question. And Maggie, I would tell you this. Obviously, I just philosophically have believed, obviously, in climate change and the impact that it's making on our day in, day out life in the environment around us. And the one thing that as I got elected to the legislature and I started doing just extensive amounts of reading on different policies, different issues, it became clear to me that while that sometimes we may not be able to get people around the table to agree on the difference between clean energy and what the benefits of clean energy are in comparison to our traditional fossil fuels, the one thing that I've seen more than anything else that we can find agreement on is the idea that there is always a better way to reduce our energy usage and to be able to try to be as energy efficient as possible, whether it's utilizing Energy Star computers, whether it's utilizing LEED green building techniques for a new building, things that we know technology and science has really advanced our capabilities to be able to maximize our utilization of energy, no matter or resources in general, water resources as well. And I think that, in my mind, is the one issue when I worked in the legislature that I generally felt that Republicans, Democrats, liberals, moderates, and conservatives all could generally understand together that this was something that was not partisan. It wasn't an ideological fight. It was really an issue that people understood that more we can make your home more energy efficient, or the way we can make your business more energy efficient, utilizing more energy efficient products and obviously your building design or your redevelopment of a building, that we're able to reduce your energy usage. That's better for you actually economically always in the long run. And it's the challenge that the only challenge I'd say we always have is a lot of the times when you embark on some kind of energy efficiency upgrade, there's obviously an upfront cost, and that usually for folks like me who live in a very very middle class home in South Omaha, Nebraska, the reality for me to upgrade our 1967 home, that can cost thousands of dollars, whether
Sure.
it's to put in a new energy efficient furnace, whether it's to put a new high efficiency water heater, to add more high efficiency windows, or more insulation around the house. Those are expensive upgrades to a 1967 home. But I think to some extent, some of the work that we were able to do in the legislature is find a financing mechanism for property owners, both residential, commercial, industrial property owners, all three, to be able to utilize this new financing mechanism available to be able to pay for those upgrades. So you don't have to pay for anything out of pocket for those upgrades. And you can pay it back, those costs, over a 20-year period on your property tax bill. And you pay that cost off every single year over 20 years. And obviously the ways that you pay for part of that is the energy reductions and the savings you have in your natural gas and your water and your electricity bills. And to some extent, the way it was created in the law is that if you were to move, or I was to leave and move my house, move from my home after we did those upgrades, whoever bought my home who is taking advantage of all those energy efficiency upgrades and are paying very low energy bills, very low heating bills. They then pick up the cost of paying for that, not just me. And that's the challenge when it comes to energy efficiency is more times than not, you've got to pay for it out of pocket right up front, whether it's through a bank loan or paying for it, a home improvement loan, which you, Maggie Davis, is paying for it up front, and only you, Maggie Davis, are the one who has to incur that cost. Where this new financing mechanism that we really spent 7 years working on in the legislature, we got it finally passed my last year in 2016, allows you now under current state law to be able to pay for these upgrades to your property over that 20-year period. And the property actually is the entity that's required to pay it, not Maggie Davis or Heath Mello. And so it gives the ability for people who live in older homes or older properties who need that energy efficiency upgrade to those properties to be able to actually do them, pay for them, and see the benefit from them if it's not them and they sell the property, that someone else actually gets to have to participate in that process because they're the ones who see the benefit of it.
Right. Where do people go to learn more about that program if they're interested?
That is a great question, Maggie. And I would tell you the challenge we've got right now. It's called PACE financing. It's property assessed clean energy financing. And actually, the way it works is that the city of Omaha actually has to pass a local ordinance first to be able to allow the process to work.
Okay.
It's a state law, but really what it is that local city governments around the state can create these ordinances to allow this financing mechanism to kind of play out and to be able to offer it to all property owners. The city of Lincoln actually looks like they're going to be the first city in the state to actually create this local ordinance to allow PACE financing to be able to be used by property owners. My hope, obviously, I've been trying to push people in Omaha to consider doing it as fast as possible, just because I hear and see it every single day just in the older part of town that I live in, that people would love to be able to do upgrades to their home.
Absolutely. My house was built in 27.
There it is. I mean, people who live in older homes or business owners who have literally older commercial properties that say, look, I'd love to do an HVAC upgrade if I could. And to some extent, I may not own this property for another 5 to 7 years, but look, if we've got to do this, why wouldn't we want to keep an upgrade and maintain this property and still be able to use this financing to really pay for our energy efficiency upgrades? And so that's something that my hope is PACE financing will be in Omaha soon. It's something that, like I say, I think it really is a game changer when it comes to energy efficiency. You know, other things we did, though, too, in the technology world, something so basic like when I was one of the first bills that we got, energy bills of mine we got passed in the legislature, was requiring state government to utilize Energy Star appliances. Something that seemed kind of so simple in the sense that, you know, why are we not prioritizing Energy Star products first and foremost, because we know they are more energy efficient than a non-Energy Star appliance. And so little things like that I'm convinced technology is helping government change the way they use energy, from everything from how they benchmark buildings to, obviously, I'm convinced the Internet of Things is going to revolutionize, obviously, the way government works in the future, in the sense of everything from how we heat, cool buildings to how technology interacts with each other with a click of a button outside, obviously off a smartphone, from not just the operations, but arguably how those operations connect with other software, other mechanisms, and other services that the city provides. And that's one thing that, you know, you're not hearing an awful lot about probably in government, at least in Nebraska right now at the state or local level, is how are we preparing ourselves for the Internet of Things? How are we looking at our technology upgrades? How are we looking at the future of our existing technology major purchases that we've got to make over the next 5 to 10 years? How are we looking at these in the sense that the Internet of Things is likely going to change an awful lot of what we do, when we do it, why we do it, and how that technology ultimately is going to be integrated with every single service, every single process we partake in City Hall at some point in the future. That's what excites me, is in the sense that I think so much is happening right now that we've got a unique opportunity to really look to the future, really be as innovative as possible, and really try to set the stage for Omaha to become, I would say, more of a laboratory in regards to identifying other amazing technologies that the private sector may be using or other local governments or state governments around the country have experimented with, and see if we can make them really work in Omaha, because it's not just dealing with energy energy efficiency, that you have some amazing opportunities of technological upgrades. It's pretty much everything that involves your day in, day out services at City Hall, that with the right kind of leadership, with the right kind, I think, of mentality, the opportunities truly are endless.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the future of technology, what your view is on that, and then I also want our listeners to hear a little bit more about who Heath Mello is.
Okay.
And, have the opportunity to talk a little bit about your campaign.
Great.
So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Dave is tasked with managing a software development team. He is constantly challenged to meet the demands of the business. These demands come from all angles, including growing the team, finding high-quality resources, keeping talent, keeping up with current projects, while addressing the needs of new projects and the specialized skills they require. All of this while adhering to an ever-changing budget. Traditionally, Dave has navigated these challenges by partnering with his HR team and outsourced recruiters to find more people while monitoring individual costs to stay on budget. However, these avenues create other challenges, like the time it takes to find resources, the effort in qualifying resources, the varying pay rates, the risk of turnover after all the effort has been made, and budget cuts. Dave has even tried to utilize offshore resources, and after experiencing mediocre results, he realizes he has to find a better way. Then Dave found Linkstream, a company with high-quality .NET developers that could provide an onshore solution team for his needs. He finds out with their developer cloud offering, he will have on-demand access to experienced professionals to help with custom development, product overflow, lengthy backlogs, and bug fixes, and all at a set rate. He no longer has to put off projects until he can find the right resources. He no longer has to sit through interview after interview or sift through resume after resume and call after call from recruiters. More importantly, he now has a solution he can scale up or down at any time to meet the demands of the business and his budget. He calls to learn more and talks with an account manager. They identify the right dedicated lead developer that will be assigned to his account and arrange a meeting to outline the right solution and designate the optimal subscription for his needs. After the meeting, Dave chooses a subscription level at 500 to 600 hours with a locked-in rate for 24 months. He also has the flexibility to increase or decrease his range of hours. And if he increases the range, his rate actually goes down. More importantly, he can cancel his subscription with only 60 days' notice. Now Dave is prepared to address the challenges of scaling a development team to meet the demands of the business without sacrificing quality or time. Never having to worry about the need for more office space, the cost of an employee, expensive software licenses, the hassle of reviews, or the challenges of turnover. He takes comfort in knowing his Linkstream account manager and dedicated lead developer can be on-site or available over the phone if he needs them. He knows he can count on them to stay up to speed with his business and the solutions he will need to meet the challenges of his team. To Dave, Linkstream is more than just development resources. We are long-term partners in his team's success.
All right, welcome back to TechBus. We're here with Heath Mello. Heath, thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely, Maggie, absolutely.
All right, so we are going to talk a little bit about the future of technology, what he thinks Omaha will see in maybe the next 5 years, and just a little bit broader view on technology in its future state. So, Heath, you had mentioned earlier a project that you were talking about with Innovate Omaha. Mm-hmm. Can you dive into that a little bit deeper and help our listeners understand that program a little bit more and how that would really affect the future state of technology, particularly in Omaha?
Absolutely, Maggie, and I'd say to some extent, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that governments in general have a tendency to take a much more cautious approach when it comes to experimenting and taking risks when it comes to identifying technology needs to help them provide better services, better outcomes, better products, and better services. And what we announced back in December was this initiative called the Innovate Omaha Initiative. And this entire focus in this program really is to just bring in almost, best way to describe it, it's almost like an entrepreneur in residence kind of model, where you bring in entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs and their companies to bring them inside and literally co-house them inside a city department for, we said, 6 months, and really give them a number of big issues that for whatever reason the city's not been able to find a way technologically to be able to solve. That we don't have the existing technology as a city to be able to figure this and make this problem, to solve this problem the way that we feel is adequate for the taxpayers, adequate for the public, or we are starting to identify big problems that are percolating up in different areas of the department that we think maybe a new technology or a new program or a new software could help us solve this problem before it gets worse.
Give us an example, like of one of those specific problems that we could solve.
Well, I would say, to some extent, let's just say looking at our public works department in regards to how we as a city are able to be able to, let's just say how we're able to track snow removal as a city, in regards to how we're able to track snow removal in real time, and a real time status to be able to collect snow removal data in real time status, then how we're able to share that data. And one idea that we've thrown out before is, look, it's easy. Probably the easiest thing to do is just put GPS trackers on snow plows, and then you can track them online. But we've been talking, look, there's got to be some other ideas that people in the tech community and the startup community have in regards to how can we identify, one, not just tracking a snowplow, but actually, is there any way for us to be able to track everything involving that snowplow's activity and or what's been happening with the streets that they've already plowed? Is the street we already know has been not only plowed, but it's also has salt and gravel that's laid on it as well. So you're able to look at on your smartphone before you're getting ready to leave your home, possibly that the software and app that was designed by an Omaha startup company with the Public Works Department says we're able to track obviously all of your streets in regards to whether or not it's been plowed, where the plow is, whether or not there's been salt put on the street, whether it's been gravel put on the street, what was the time frame of when that was done, so you know whether or not this was done 10 minutes ago or it was done 4 hours ago, and be able to track and collect all of that data and be able to use that data and make it more user-friendly, more usable. Is something I think is other cities have. I use that as an example because other cities have tried to do that, and they've done. Some have done a much better job than others in regards to trying to provide that real-time snow removal data to the public. And to some extent, in talking just with some of our startup companies in Omaha, it's not just about snow removal. They're looking at transportation as well, looking at traffic congestion. Is there ways for us as a city to be able to identify a smarter way to reduce traffic congestion at certain times of the day based on a number of factors that right now, if you really think about it, a lot of the times that the city goes out and tries to take stock in regards to traffic congestion is putting a person in a truck and literally manually counting the number of cars that drive by. Mm-hmm. I'd say to some extent the idea that a company, one of the startups I met on the campaign trail, has actually developed a software that's able, based on existing cameras, so the city, depending on how many cameras the city put up across Omaha, would be able to utilize their software in partnership with another major corporation, software company around the world, to be able to literally count those cars electronically with the software, so you don't have to pay someone to go sit in a car and count cars, with existing cameras and with their recognition software that integrates with that camera, in a way for them to be able to say, we can find out everything you need to know in regards to the number of bicyclists, walkers, cars that have gone by this intersection, and be able to help do some analytics and be able to really produce massive amounts of data to the city to say, here is what you're probably going to need to consider at this intersection based on all of this data that we collected off one camera and all of our analytics and software that was able to digest all of it and produce a usable report for you. Those are companies that to some extent, the company I met regarding the transportation and the recognition software as it came to transportation and traffic congestion. That's a company that's in Omaha right now. They're basically originally out of Missouri, but to some extent they won a recent competition, and the hope is they stay in Omaha and continue to grow and develop and take that software and expand it to not just transportation options, but a lot of other potential uses that the city of Omaha and other cities could use when it comes to recognition, whether it's facial recognition, vehicle recognition software that allows the city to be able to use it for a number of reasons. But I think it really comes back to, as I've said, is really allowing city departments, so allowing people who've worked in City Hall for years, really just to come out and say, these are problems we've had for years we can't find a way to solve.
And how do we use technology? And how do we leverage technology to solve these problems? Because it's possible. How
do we use Maggie Davis Inc., who is really focused on this kind of software and this kind of technology? How do we use Maggie Davis's Inc. company to come in and really get us thinking in a different way and looking at their software and tweaking their software maybe to make it work for Omaha or make it work for city government, where traditionally maybe it worked just for the private sector.
Right.
And that is, in my mind, I think that is that kind of collaboration and synergy that you can bring inside your local government if you have the executive leadership who believes in the basic philosophy that we have to be working every day to find something new and creative of how we're doing business. And to realize that while we have really hardworking city employees, we know that they're not technologists. We know that to some extent they're not running startup companies, that they're not looking at their day in, day out processes and or departments or divisions the same way that a Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs did when they were creating earth-changing technology and earth-changing products. And I think that is the opportunity that really exists, not just now, but as I would say, the city of the future, and really an issue that we haven't talked a lot about, which is the movement towards making metro areas become smart cities. Really not just taking what I'm saying with this Innovate Omaha program, but really taking a much wider encompassing perspective on everything technology-wise of how their city does every single service, how they do every single process. That is what's happening now, and that's the future of governance. That's the future of major metro areas, not just in the United States, but around the world. And we've been able to see major cities in Asia, in Europe, really embrace this smart city mentality of truly looking at every potential technology that's available for them, everything from the way that they're able to heat streets to reduce snow melt on streets, to utilizing, to some extent, utilizing new traffic cameras and new traffic software, to everything from how their light posts connect to their traffic lights that connect to obviously their general infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, and their city and energy infrastructure. Making sure everything is so interconnected that literally with a couple clicks of a button or one phone call, you're able to pull up on your screen your entire grid of your city technologically and see how everything is interlinked. And that's something that, really, in the United States, the Obama administration really pushed this smart city challenge that they recently did this last year. And they had a number of cities across the country submit applications of how they could make their city a smart city when it came to transportation. And the city of Columbus was really the city that ended up winning the challenge. And part of what they focused on was looking at health outcomes and how their transportation system, with the advent of new technology and the integration of new technology, could change their health outcomes as a city. Particularly, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was their mortality rate, of really focusing on how they could change their mortality rate as a city when it came to utilizing more technology as part of their transportation system, which was something that most cities didn't do.
That was their measure of success?
Yes, it was.
Was there a difference?
They're working on it. They're working on it right now. So they won the Smart City Challenge through the Department of Transportation at the end of the Obama administration. And they received, I believe it was close to a $50 million grant, up to more, I think up to like another $25 million, aside from bringing in leveraging other private sector and philanthropic sector resources to truly try to reinvent their city when it came to how their transportation system was connected with more technology and what were those outcomes that they were seeking for based on this integrated technology system. And there's a number of other cities that are looking at it as well. I mean, like I said, there was a number of finalists. Omaha did put an application. I think reading the application myself and others, it was nothing that compared to what other cities that were finalists who really had some very, I think, major visions of how they could reinvent their city technologically to really make it a smart city, quote unquote. But I think if anything, what I've seen by reviewing a lot of those applications and talking with people who were engaged in that process is that's the future. That's the future of Omaha if we want to go out and grab it. If we want to really try to bring in people who do this for a living, who are risk takers in regards to the technology industry, who see how that they can interplay with our urban planners, with our public works department, and be able to see this as some things that you're not even closely thinking about, but we're not expecting you to think about it because we're technologists. We're looking at software changes every single day and processes that we think can improve outcomes or improve an existing software that makes it that much more user-friendly or applicable to what you may be doing at the city level. That's where I'm convinced we can take Omaha with the right kind of vision, the right kind of leadership, that we can make Omaha compete against these other cities that are really leaps and bounds ahead of us when it comes to really accepting and embracing that smart city mentality.
Sure. Now, you're no stranger to innovation, and then you also mentioned a lot of projects related to transportation. I'm curious, you were involved in a project related to ride sharing with Uber and Lyft during your time in the legislature. Can you talk about that? I think that's a very interesting project.
You know, Maggie, it was a labor of love for me as a state senator working on ride sharing because I saw back in really it was in the spring of 2014. It was essentially after the legislative session. It was coming close as my legislative session was ending in late March and early April, that the issue of ride sharing started to percolate up in the Omaha area. That Lyft actually had come into Omaha and really started to they started hiring drivers and felt that to some extent they could do this because there wasn't a state law that forbid them from doing what they wanted to do. And as everyone generally knows, disruptive technologies truly disrupts industries.
That's right.
And to some extent, the disruptive technology of Uber and Lyft really started to disrupt the taxi industry in Omaha, which I think most people would agree is not always it's not near, or people would say probably it wasn't near as advanced as Uber and Lyft. Uber and Lyft was technologically in regards to providing transportation services the way people want them. And so it really threw a monkey wrench kind of in the existing powers that be and the systems in place when it came to public transportation. And as I got involved in that process, it became very clear to me that disruptive technology is going to continually be the wave of the future. And it's not just Uber and Lyft, but Airbnb being the other major disruptive technology in regards to providing people housing accommodations in regards to going aside and outside of your traditional hotel or motel industry. But the Uber and Lyft discussion, I'll tell you, really was a process that taught me more than anything how difficult it is to get to not only get people to understand why disruptive technologies are not a bad thing, but to some extent that business as we know it, or the business climate as we know it, and the processes that we're just used to because it's the way it's always been, and it's going to be that way in the future. I think as much as anything else, it really made a lot of people we worked with on that legislation take a step back and realize the world's changing pretty quickly, because Uber and Lyft both were widely popular in the Omaha area, even with the limited use that they had galvanized in the Omaha area. Anyone who's traveled to any other major city that already had Uber and Lyft, that's what you take in a lot of cities. You mix it up between taxis and Uber and Lyft depending upon what you're doing and where you need to go. But I don't think people fully realize that there was just a groundswell of support in the city of people who said, "Look, I want to be able to use an Uber or a Lyft, and I don't know why legislators, and I don't know why the taxi industry or the banking industry or the insurance industry doesn't want to see this occur. Like, why are you trying to stifle these businesses
I didn't
that want
understand
to
it
come?
either because it's so convenient. I think I've used Uber 10 times more than I've ever used a taxi, and I didn't understand what the hesitation was from the government.
Well, and to some extent, it's a mix of all three. So to some extent, it was a hesitation from the state government of saying, look, we don't know, we want to treat you as a taxi, even though Uber and Lyft would say we're not a taxi.
Right.
We don't do the same things as taxis do, and we are a square peg, and you're trying to put us in a round hole, and that's not applicable to how our business model is or the service that we provide and how we provide that service. And so that conversation and dialogue was very interesting. It was very intense, I'll tell you. In working with multinational insurance companies, with the banking industry, the credit unions, working with a multiple number of entities, the taxi industry obviously being a major player. They actually, I would say, at the end of the process, the taxi industry, for the most part, at least the major taxi companies in the metro area, were much better to work with than I think people ever realize. And we actually probably in Nebraska, particularly in Omaha, we were lucky that we were able to really have, I think, a very good faith partner working with the taxi industry when we were crafting this legislation. They helped improve the process. They helped improve the legislation, and they understood to some extent that Uber and Lyft weren't going to go anywhere. That they were not going to be able to say we're going to keep you out of our,
Right.
you're going to keep you out of Omaha.
It was going to happen.
It was going to happen, and I think they actually acknowledged much of anything else that disruptive technology provided them an opportunity as an industry to take a step back and reevaluate their service, reevaluate their technology, and what they could be doing to provide better transportation options to the public at large as well.
What did you want to be when you grew up? Was it always a politician?
No. I joked with my staff about this. As a kid, I was an avid baseball player, and so growing up, I played shortstop as a kid, as well as outfield, and I loved as a kid growing up the Oakland Athletics, and there was in the late '80s there was Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire, well-known baseball players on the Oakland Athletics, Ricky Henderson, and I always thought I wanted to be a professional baseball player, and that was really what I thought growing up. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to do everything I could to become a professional baseball player, and I realized, as I loved the sport, and I really did, I loved baseball. It was always something that just gave me an excitement, a passion. As I grew older, and I still enjoyed it, it dawned on me though that simply becoming a collegiate baseball player is much more difficult than people realize, let alone being a professional baseball player. And as I joked, as I grew older, I got pulled in so many different other sports, other activities that I didn't solely focus on playing baseball, and I think to some extent it's all right that I didn't achieve the profession I wanted to go into as a kid, but that's why my parents, as I grew up, my parents always said, they were like, look, that's great. You want to just keep practicing, but you got to think about something you may want to do in case you don't become.
Maybe you have
They have
a backup plan.
a backup plan, and they were always great about encouraging me of saying, that's great. You got to, let's keep. We love that you love baseball. It's great, but maybe you want to go do something else too, and you always be thinking about other things you may want to do. And but that kind of was always the hope and the dream growing up as a kid. So
Yeah, that's fun. So do you have a mentor or a hero?
I've got a number of mentors actually, both I think in the sense of people who are just people I've been able to work with in my life growing up, both in politics and out of politics. Former state senators who really embraced me almost in a grandfather grandson or a father-son relationship that really helped just nurture my development, not just as a state senator, but as someone who really strived to learn more about how to be, I would say, a more servant leader in regards to not just being in public service, but how you serve others in a way of helping bring the best out of them and help you bring them to the table and try to build consensus of getting people together to work together on big things. And one of those individuals, former state senator John Harms from Scotts Bluff. We served together for 6 years in the legislature, and he was just someone who really to this day in the legislature just provided me just so much mentorship. Just a man that I'll forever be grateful for in regards to him pulling me aside and trying to help focus a lot of my energy, a lot of my charisma and enthusiasm about wanting to see things happen, and really help teach me in that servant leadership model of really building consensus and really helping put me under his wing to help kind of guide me through earlier in my legislative career of how I could grow and develop and become a much better public servant and a much better person in the process. Also, I'd say the former state senator that I took over for, former Senator Don Preister, who is now actually a city councilman in the city of Bellevue. He has been he was a terrific mentor of mine as a candidate. He was the city and state senator I was trying to replace, and someone who was just a very active community member in the South Omaha area for years, for decades. And he really taught me and really instilled in me, I think, that fundamental value of civic and community service is just as important as public service. So in regards to continually encouraging me to get involved with more neighborhood events, more neighborhood organizations, to really balance out my time and really help me understanding how important those community betterment and neighborhood and small business organizations are as important as anything you really do in regards to being down at the state capitol, because that's the ability for you as a person to be able to go help people at their business, at their home, in their neighborhood. And it really just gave me a much more global view of what a real public servant can be when you look at it outside of just being in office, when you're not just in the Capitol or you're just in City Hall, or you're just in your job, that you look outside of yourself and say, my job is also to be able to go help out here and help do this and partner with this and be involved with this activity, even though I'm not writing a piece of legislation, I'm not giving a big debate or engaging in a big debate or giving a speech about solving this big policy issue facing us. And he really instilled in me that real kind of community organizing mentality, that is how you're able to truly connect with people and get people more engaged with the big issues you've got to solve locally. That you can't just go and give big speeches, and you can't just go into the Capitol and start solving problems. You've got to be able to galvanize and organize people locally around concerns, around issues, around opportunities, that if you can solve them here and engage everyone at this local level, you can then engage them in a much bigger conversation, much bigger issues that are at the forefront of what you have to go do down in Lincoln as a state senator. And so Don still is. He is still one of my mentors, and he's not too far from me. He lives in Bellevue, and I'm in South Omaha. But he's just a man with an amazing heart and amazing spirit, and someone who just is able to just provide such a level-headed, thoughtful perspective of the world, but more so of how to really look at people and really focus on relationships. And that's the one thing I kind of would leave you with this, is that, the one thing I learned from both former Senator Harms and former Senator Preister as mentors of mine in different ways is that focus on relationships. That at the end of the day, no matter what you do with your life, no matter what you do in public office or what you do professionally, that the relationships matter more sometimes than the outcomes. Because unless you're never going to see the person ever again for the remainder of your life, relationships arguably will always be the driving factor of what you choose to do and how you choose to approach another situation, whether it's a similar situation or a completely different one. And focusing on maintaining those relationships, of trying to build and grow those and nurture those relationships, realizing that you may not always agree on things, and that's okay, but really, if you care about the relationship, you'll find a way to seek out consensus, to seek out compromise, to seek out a way to make sure that you strengthen the relationship after sometimes you see conflict, instead of letting that relationship disintegrate and or just kind of disappear based on concerns or based on we just want to go a different way. And I think to some extent that's always a challenge. It's a challenge in the private sector when you've got to do business with a customer or a client, and you want to try to have the best, strongest relationship possible. And at times, there's a give and take in that process. And I always say it's that same way in the public sector, particularly with elected officials, in the sense that there are a number of times people who are friends of mine, people I feel I have strong relationships with, don't agree with me. They don't believe in the same philosophy. They don't believe in the same outcome. They don't believe in the same decision. And as I said, look, at the end of the day, what matters more to me is being honest, being candid, being thoughtful, and always reminding the person who's sitting at the table having this discussion that the relationship matters more. That we may disagree here, but I'm not.
Right.
I want to make sure how I present this issue, how I talk about this issue, how we engage on issues like this moving forward. That the relationship that we have matters more than just this one single outcome on this one component, and trying to find ways to get to get everyone to yes. A book my dad gave me when I went to college was getting to yes, and just saying, look, if anything, this is a book that if you read, it'll teach you a little bit more about how you deal with people and how you have to work with people moving forward with your life. And it's a great book that really kind of helps you learn and just think about there's always a way to try to find a happy medium between conflict. And those relationships, Don Preister and John Harms both taught me that how valuable that is. But I think there's a way to really always take it to another level as you continue to grow and develop.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had some great mentors. Mm-hmm. All right, so lastly, I want to give you the opportunity to just really talk to our listeners about, why you're running and really why they should vote for Heath Mello.
Well, Maggie, I would say this. I'm running for mayor because I believe we can be a better Omaha right now. I believe we can be a better city. Omaha's doing okay, but, I fundamentally think we need to be better than okay. And as I've said, I'm convinced after talking with people across the city for well over a 9-month period of really engaging people intensely about what they are looking for, what their hopes and dreams are, and what they think we could or should be doing. It really is people are asking for a mayor who can really help lay out a big vision to help us build the Omaha of the future. And that's, I think, the fundamental reason to some extent of why I'm running for mayor is because I said when I announced there just wasn't a unifying vision across this city that really connected the entire city about where we're going to be going over the next 20 years and how we're going to be over the next 20 years rebuilding a new city or reinventing a city that's focused on the new opportunities of the future, the changing economy that we know is happening around us globally, that really embracing what I would say the advent of new technologies, new processes, of being a more welcoming, more inclusive city to peoples of all faiths, of all orientations, of all races. And I think to some extent that is why I've told people I'm running for mayor, is that I think we have to have that vision. We have to have that public leadership who doesn't just make sure that our trash is picked up, that doesn't just make sure that our streets are getting plowed and that we're fixing our potholes and rebuilding our streets. That's very important work. And to some extent, we've laid out some real, I think, good proposals of ways that we can integrate technology more to do that. But I think it's about truly rebuilding and building the city of the future, and that is looking to major modernizations of our transportation system. That's looking to reinventing the entire way the city hall does business. That's getting to the root causes of crime in our city, which we know is going and attacking the lack of living wage jobs, the lack of access to behavioral health care, the lack of access to transportation and quality affordable housing. Those 4 things we know, if we don't have those 4 things in every single zip code in the city, we're never going to truly be able to make Omaha as safe as possible, which is a goal of mine. And I think it's those kind of issues outside of a number of other economic issues we talked a little bit about embracing really the future of our economy, which I'm convinced is those advanced industries. It's those small businesses, those startup companies that we as a city need to focus as much time, energy, and effort on those entities and those businesses and those entrepreneurs as we do Fortune 1000 companies, which is we've done a good job over a number of years of really focusing on our large businesses and the opportunities we have to help bring in maybe medium or larger sized businesses over the last 30 to 40 years. But I'm convinced the future of our economy locally is really tied to technology. It's tied to those high skilled jobs. And really, I think as a city, laying out the blueprint to be able to connect workforce, job opportunities in some of these advanced industries, that's what's going to separate us over the next 20 years from any of our competitors in the region. I'm convinced outside of truly rebuilding the city's transportation system that brings in more density, brings in more talent, is more attractive as a city to not just millennials, but I would say the talented professionals across the workforce that is looking for a city of the future to go move to live in, to go to school in, to raise a family in, to start a business in. And that's why I think we've seen seen so much success in our campaign over the last few months is that people are excited about this vision. They're excited to hear about a 37-year-old mayor, a potential 37-year-old mayor, I should say, who is focused on the next 20 years, not the next 4 years. And that, I think, is a lot different than what we see right now in a lot of our politics around the Nebraska and a lot of our politics, frankly, around the country.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure to get to know you, and I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.